This next lecture series will be on organizational communication. So if we look and we have this in front of us, this is the formal small group networks. And there are three basic types of networks: the chain, the wheel, and the all channel. So let's look at these. If we look at the types of small group networks, chain, the first one, these networks rigidly follow the formal chain of command, and this can be seen in traditional bureaucratic organizations, and most of you may have worked for an organization like this where that's the only way that communication took place within your organization, that it rigidly followed a formal chain. But we also have the wheel. These networks rely on a central figure to be the conduit for all the group's communication. And this type of network is often seen in teams with strong leaders and leaders acting as the conduit. It's where the communication is distributed from that person. Now, all channel, in this network, all group members actively communicate with each other. An example of this type of network would be a self-managed work team that we talked about in last week's lesson. So if we look at that and what effectiveness is with this, the effectiveness of each network hinges upon dependent variable needs to be emphasized within the organization. So we know that accuracy is best achieved through the chain network. So it's going to be more accurate if we have a chain of where it's very hierarchical. But the speed is moderate, and then the emergence of leaders is moderate, and member satisfaction is moderate. But let's look at the wheel. That's interesting that the speed is fast with the wheel, accuracy is high, emergence of a leader is high, but member satisfaction is low. So our highest member satisfaction comes from the all-channel network of looking at that. So leadership development is best facilitated through the wheel, but high member satisfaction is promoted in the all-channel network. Well, let's talk about the grapevine. In addition to formal network systems of communications in organizations, there exists an informal one, and that's just as important. It's called the grapevine. Most of you have probably had this happen in your organization. It does happen. And when we look at the grapevine, the characteristics of it are control. The grapevine is not controlled by management of the organization. So people are talking and they're saying what they please or what they want to put out there. Now, the credence. Most employees find information gained through the grapevine to be more believable and reliable than data gained through formal channels. So people believe their friends, they believe their peers, their co-workers, more than they believe what we like to call the man, which is management. Focus. The grapevine is largely used to serve the self-interest of the people within it. Now, conditions. The conditions that foster a grapevine are the situation. So when employees believe the situation is important to them and they feel like they're getting insufficient information through formal channels, then a grapevine can take root. And I will tell you, most organizations have some type of grapevine, but when there's high uncertainty, it thrives. Ambiguity. Grapevines often occur when there does not seem to be a clear understanding of how the organization or the managers are going to react in a given situation. And then anxiety. When the situation is important and ambiguous, employees are often anxious about their situation. So one of the ways to relieve the tension is to increase communication, and they can do that through the grapevine. So the advantages of a grapevine: it's acting both as a filter and a feedback mechanism. The grapevine holds potential benefits for both employees and management. Translation. The grapevine translates formal communication into the jargon of the employees. So employees can understand it. They trust the grapevine, they understand it, and it's typically in a language that they can understand, or on a level of their knowledge of the language. Organizational insight. By tapping into the grapevine, managers can more accurately assess the morale of the organization, the issues that concern employees, and the causes of the employee anxiety. This knowledge helps the managers better predict organizational behavior. So if you're a manager, what you need to be doing is tapping into that internal grapevine and finding out what people are saying, what their concerns are, what their anxiety is within the organization. Then with Grapevine, there's rapid communication. Managers can impart informal information very quickly throughout the organization just by utilizing a small set of individuals or liaisons who actively pass on information to more than one person. And most of us know that person that knows everything that happens in the organization, so they're the person to get that information to so they can disseminate and put that information out to the other employees. Now, there are disadvantages to having the grapevine. The information in the grapevine's not always accurate. So as a manager, you need to attempt to limit the range and the impact of rumors. And I may put it up, I don't know, I've got an old video that shows, it's from the 1950s, I believe. It's kind of insulting, especially to women and the role that they play in organizations, but we know that sometimes the grapevine and the rumors have to be quashed, and we have to try to hold that down. But it's interesting to know, again, it's going to happen in your organization. So you as a manager need to tap into it and know what's being said within your organization. Let's talk a little bit about computer-aided communication. Email is the most used right now computer-aided communication that we have, and it's defined as the use of the internet to transmit and receive computer-generated text and documents. Email has become a necessary component, and I remember the days before email. I'm certain some of you do not. But if we look at email, the advantages is they can be written quickly, they can be edited, they can be stored, they can be quickly and freely distributed to multiple individuals, and they can be read at the convenience of the recipient. Now there's disadvantages. They can also be impersonal. They can be ignored easily. They can have the lack of emotional content. And because of the remote nature of emails, you can have conflict spirals or flame wars. And they're far more likely to occur in this medium than face-to-face communication, because people will say in an email what they won't say in person, but you have to be careful with emails. Again, they live in perpetuity, and they can be held against you, and they can be forwarded, and they can be sent to bosses. So be extremely careful what you put and what you write in an email, because it can easily be shared. And I've had situations where I've dealt where someone has maybe even done a reply all instead of a reply to someone, and that can cause serious implications as well. We have instant messaging, and IM is essentially real-time email. You can do that through Slack, and we'll talk about that when we get to virtual and look at virtual teams. But it is real-time email. The primary differences between the two is that IM is best for 1 or 2 line messages, while email is better for longer communications. Again, advantages: IM is fast, it's inexpensive, and you can get your message to that person quickly. But disadvantages: it can be intrusive, it can be distracting, it can make it difficult for employees to concentrate and stay focused. It's easier for the employees to electronically lollygag using IM. It's also a very insecure way to communicate in organizational communication, so being careful of what you share over that. Intranet and extranet links. The intranet provides organizational-wide information networks that look and act like a website, but which only people within your organization have access. And then the extranet is the private organizational information networks that link you to selected suppliers, customers, strategic partners. And then we have video conferencing, Zoom linking. This extension permits employees to exchange live audio, visual images with each other during meetings. It lowers the cost of video conferencing. It's really, for us, I know, and education, it's been wonderful to have the Zoom link, and we will use that when we get to virtual teams, simply because Gosh, you can communicate your information. I can share screens with people. I can see people, and it's just an easier way to do message and have that. I'm going to wrap up. Let me go through. I've got email. This is the slide on email that you can go back and read on it while I talked about it. This is on instant messaging. This is on intranet and extranet links, just so you'll have this if when you go back to study for your final. Talking about video conferencing. Let's talk a little bit about knowledge management. And knowledge management is a process of organizing, distributing the organization's collective wisdom so the right information gets to the right people at the right time. And it's really important if we look at knowledge management. We talk about intellectual assets. Intellectual assets are now as important as physical or financial ones in many organizations, and the ability to quickly and efficiently tap into the employees' collective experience and wisdom helps build intellectual assets. And you have that within companies. Of when you lose people, you've got to make sure that you retain that institutional knowledge that that person has. Because there is the knowledge loss, and we're going to have baby boomers leaving the workforce, which some of you are probably going, yay, baby boomers going away, and they're retiring. But when they do, it's going to leave behind a large knowledge gap. So organizations are working to collect that knowledge and to have that knowledge so that can be passed on to other employees. And then just the efficiency. By capturing existing knowledge, employees can use that experience of previous employees to reduce wasteful time spent just retracing the path that's already been traveled. And you don't have to go back down that road again. And that, I'll say that institutional knowledge, that within itself is having someone on staff that has that can be very valuable. Okay, this wraps up the lectures for the week, and you guys are going to have a paper, so that's really your only assignment for the week, but that's enough. But be sure, again, watch your videos, know the information, and then have your paper written, and we will join you again next week.